get you in jail. Off we go.
So hello everyone, and welcome to our Xerox Business Solutions April 2019 PSSM call. So without further ado, a couple of topics I'm going to cover today. B8000, obviously 4 out of the 6 are going to be B8000 related. We'll talk a little bit about fuser drive gear. I know I've heard from everyone on the need for it, so we'll talk about that today. The release of the HVF ejector, high volume finisher ejector, there's a bulletin. I'll share that today. The B8000 toner dispense, definitely seen some reports, early failures on those, so we'll talk about that today. Our infamous toner puff problem. With so many bulletins that have gone out, I just want to make sure that we all have the latest as we attempt to quantify the problem, the severity, and whether it exists. Again, that was just an improvement when they came out with the trimmer bar, so we'll talk in depth about that today too. The Versant drums, another CDMG supply issue. We seem to have a few of those on my list anymore. The flange gap bulletin that went out, we'll talk about that today and what we can do next steps. Obviously, I've heard from a few as far as the problem still being there, so we'll talk about that. And finally, we'll wrap up with production color software matrix. We'll chat about that today. So we'll move right along. B8000 fuser drive gear. So well aware, it's been going on for a while. There's a picture of the image there where the main drive gear that supplies drive to the fuser wears out. It was never spared, so the only recourse we had was to order one of the main drive module part numbers, depending on the speed of the machine, to get that part. They have agreed to spare it. That's not the issue nowadays. It's getting it logistically spared. I know it sounds like a simple thing, but the more meetings I sit in and I hear some of the struggles they're having from the supplier who gets these main drives, doesn't get it as pieces, to packaging. But we are pushing this, and I know Nick Cash from the Innovator side, we were trying to see if we couldn't, give us some gears from an innovative side producing. But I think the problem we all looked at with that was as soon as they get the gear spared and we get inventory, we'll have a part number. It'll make it very easy for everyone to order. So that will happen. It's just a timeline. So to gear up the Innovator team to try to produce a stopgap, we're hoping that it gets here tomorrow. It's not going to happen tomorrow, but I'm waiting on the next, when I finally get the word that we have parts in spares, and it will be a 607K XXX. So go ahead, Trent, order that number. But we'll find out what the real number is going to be. So today, what do? Well, if you have a part, if you have a failure, obviously you got to order one of the main drives. L2 Engineering does have a few of the gears that they have stockpiled, or not stockpiled, but they have them. If you were to call L2, open up a log, get it started, they would ship one to you. But you got to start to weigh out, from a business standpoint, right, what's the price of the phone call up there for support, the price of shipping the gear. From what we think, it may come close to or exceeding what the main drive module at this point would cost us. Still a bad answer. If you need them, absolutely go ahead. If you can't get a main drive motor for whatever reason from Green, from wherever, go ahead and take that route. Continue business as usual. Take care of your customer. But rest assured, it is on the radar. They have agreed to spare it. It's just when it hits our system. And I promise you all that we will make sure that you're aware of it as soon as we have enough in spares that we can release the number. So hold your questions. I know we're probably going to have a few of them on that one. So let's just roll through, and then we'll answer all questions at the end here. Next topic, the HVF ejector. It was a bulletin T8860 there. That introduces this modified high-volume ejector assembly. It's supposed to help out with some of the, previous codes that we've battled, maybe more reliability. I know we go through ejector assemblies quite often, especially on high volume finishers. So if you're not using that one, there's a part number there. Go ahead, give it a try. Let's see if we can get any more improvement or reliability from this ejector assembly. So, moving on, toner dispense. There were a few reports of early failures on the toner dispense. A couple of pictures there, some with a couple of the teeth missing off the drive gear, some other variances of that failure. Anything from broken gears, obviously, to cracked housings in a dispenser module assembly. So keep in mind, if you are seeing it, if it's at a high alarming rate, let's go ahead, let's get it through. We may have already had one in SharePoint. I'll have to go back and search our problem statements. We were dealing with a couple of different toner issues, but if we need to, let's get a call in and get it started. I'm hoping it's just, normal failure of the units. Hopefully, I don't know what the volumes reported on these failures were, but if we need to, we'll absolutely get it escalated up a little further. So just making you aware that there have been some reports of some early failures of that dispenser module there. Toner puffs, and I'll pause a lot on this one because it's my favorite topic, Trent. So there was a couple of bulletins that went out. Keep in mind we've had several problem sets with the 8000 drum units. We had the 303 fault with the post-fuser jam codes. That was basically root cause was down to the grounding of the ground internal of the drum to the shaft of the machine. So they came out with a new and improved HPAD kit. I think I covered that on last month's conference call, or the month before. I'm sorry, I missed last month. So that came out, and when that came out, everybody's saying, "Well, is that the fix for the toner puffs?" Well, no. You really got to read through these bulletins to understand exactly. It was just bad timing that so many came out when we were all struggling for an answer for our toner puff problem. So this is the bulletin, the final bulletin that came out that introduced the trim bar cover. So that's the one that if we are still dealing with toner puff issues, we want to make sure that we have that one installed. Now, how do we know if it's installed? Well, you have to go to the box and the serial number of the print cartridge to determine if that was the cut-in for the trimmer bar. If we have that one and it's in the machine, and keep in mind the bulletin, it's not going to be a fix. We knew that going up front. It was an improvement. I don't like the term, but that's what it was deemed as an improvement. So what does that mean quantify? I don't know. If I had 10 puffs, do I have 5 now? That's an improvement, but that's obviously not the answer. So I have heard good things on some occasions. There were some early reports from ComDoc. I know some others, but that, we had seen some drums that went the life of the drum. So let's try this first, but please make sure that you have this cut-in serial number so that you can ensure you have the trimmer bar. All right, so it would be anything manufactured after February 6th from the Mexico plant, which I think that's primarily what we will see. I don't know. Maybe we do, maybe we don't. I haven't seen any DED. Everything I've looked at from our inventory at Stewart for any of the supplies have been from the 0707 production. So February 6, 2019. You can tell by the box as well. You can absolutely, the reason you have to open up the box is to tell which site it came from. So not a bad idea just to double validate. Let's look at the serial number of the plate as we're installing it and make sure it falls in this range. If it is in this range and, our customer's still not happy, and, that potentially could be, then let's get a call started with L2. And I think I explained to many of you, I'm willing to invest the monies that will be associated with logs for a good cause. And I think this one is a good cause. We got to, in some cases, and it's not every environment, but some we struggle in. I know everybody has had best practices, and they're great, that maybe while we're in there doing other things, we take apart this, this drum unit, vacuum it all out, and, whether you're successful at that until the end of life or not, I don't think we got clear results back, but they will continue to work it. We just got at this point, because every other escalation we've had in was gearing up to the release of this improved cartridge. We're now going to take the next step then, and what accounts that aren't satisfied with the improvement of this cartridge, we'll get another call in L2 and we'll start it up again. But be prepared. We want to give them as much information just like we did the last time when we start one of these L2 logs. We do have a couple of SharePoint escalations in, so I'm well aware. I'd like to see those escalations be the ones that turn into logs, but I'm okay either way. If we're struggling, let's get a call in and let's get it started. Let's just please, 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 and I say it 3 times, make sure that our guys are aware of this bulletin and that we're dealing with the newer style drum that has the trimmer bar gap cut in. I'm not trimmer bar gap, the trimmer bar cut in. Okay. That was easy, Trent, because we didn't have questions. Moving on.
Are toner puffs a cereal now?
It's a cereal, I guess. That was just a defect. Some people call it Comet, some people call it toner puffs. It's basically a smudge. If I were to go back 3 slides, it's that 1 inch, and they can vary from inch diameter, size, length, but it's basically just toner that is coming off of the housing, dropping down in our paper, and then going through and being fused on there. So it's a toner dropping is what I would call it. So those of us that know the xerographic process that they adopted in this machine, it's not a waste bottle type of system. It is a recycling. So with recycling, I could anticipate that we would have struggled. Let's hope that maybe this trimmer bar cover, can satisfy our myth, and if not, we'll continue to escalate it up, and we'll get improvement. But this is a step. It's just not the final answer. So let me fast forward back to where I was, sir. So this is the email that I sent out. I sent it out to the Mono team that we're still looking for support, and basically if what I just told you now, we're still dealing with the problem after we ensured that we do have the new trimmer bar improved cartridge in the machine. Then let's give a call up to L2 and be prepared to have as much information as possible. The more we can give them, the better, as always. So let's jump right into our next CDMG, and I use that term. It's basically a domesticated supply chain team where our cartridges come from. So the 13R676 is for the Versant family. We know that the T80, 8070 bulletin came out warning us that, we would see this defect, and the defect potentially was the end caps where they get mounted onto the cylinder itself. They were coming loose. I won't tell you the root cause because I can tell you what I believe it is, and it makes sense, but it's basically how they were manufacturing them. I will say this. I went into, with the help of Stewart Business, I wanted to go say, okay, after this bulletin, what do we do? Do we go into our inventory? And I've heard some cores have, pulled those dated ranges, which would be, you can forget about the bottom one, I'm going to guess, because that's for the Ukraine. You won't see any of them. And I believe, again, I would be looking at the Americas, the 0707s. As I looked in Stewart's inventory, all their latest batch was from February. So the date range they originally reported was from October 2018 through January 2019. Now you can tell on the date of the box, but what you can't tell, if you really wanted to be sure as well, you'd have to open up the drum to see where it came from. But I'm guessing, and I'll wait and see. I haven't seen any of the Flex Ukraine ones. The whole lot that I've seen at Stewart was the 0707s. I would assume that's what most of our cores are receiving, but I could be wrong, so don't quote me on that one. If you do have in that range these drums, they want you to do an inspection. It is basically open up the drum, and I did do an inspection on one of the February batch at Stewart, just to see, you know, what the inspection, what I was looking for to match the bulletin, what they were talking about. And probably the hardest thing inspecting these is not physically when you have the drum and you're rotating it to see if you have a gap in the flange. And there's a good picture there. You can see the silver band, and you can see the black. The black's the end cap. You'll see that as you spin that, and you have to spin it, because if you start to see the gap in between the green and the silver changing, then that's potentially where you're going to have that problem of the end cap coming loose, wobbling, and at that point you're going to cause that cylinder to probably bang into the developer housing, short out, and ultimately causing the DV bias PWB to be damaged. So also with that being said, I don't know, even of that range, I don't know how many, because I started to say, okay, well, how would I know? And again, Stuart was very helpful in me looking at this. We looked at how many drums we used in a month period, and then I compared that to how many of the, let's see the part number here next. Whoops, that wasn't, I thought I had it in here. How many of the developer bias PWBs we had used. So Stuart, you know, they ship out about 60-month drums of the 676, and I think in the time range prior, the past 3 months, they've had 3 boards in a 3-month span. So 60 a month, 3 months, 120 drums went out. 3 of them resulted in the machine with the dev unit needed to be replaced. So it's not 100% of the myth. What I would do is what we're doing today, best practices. If our techs, we absolutely want them to be aware of it. If they're installing a drum, to take a look at it. Let's make sure we don't have a gap in that flange. And I would do it. I will tell you this today. I would do it as a best practice until told otherwise. The reason I say is I don't know if we agree with this October to January as being the only affected date range. We have had early reports, and we're still digging into them. I want to thank some of the teams that have supplied some of the photos of the gap problems seen on date ranges outside of January. But I would still keep our best practice that we inspect them. Now, what does that mean when we ship to customers? Well, that's a tough one. You won't be able to get a customer to do this type of inspection. I don't know. If you don't have the resources to do the inspection, you know, in-house. But I will say this. What's the toughest thing about the inspection, and maybe I got to go back to packaging 101, is Trent. Once you get it back in the cellophane, figuring out what angles, those little covers, the little cardboard covers, so you can put it back in the box, that's the hardest piece to it, Trent.
Oh, yeah.
Nightmare. I know, they're so hard. But there's a trick to it. I think if you were to mark them so you know which is up, if you were doing the inspection, that's what I did on the second one, and it went much easier, so that you don't rotate those end cardboards. Because once you rotate them, they got to be at the right thing, because they're not, you can't fit them out of the way. But anyway, packagings. But continue what you're doing today. If you do experience seeing this defect outside of that date range and we validate it, give me a photo of the serial number off the drum, a good photo of the one you see up top, and some of the guys have sent that. Some of them are really good, so where I can see the gap. It's tough to see, but we can see the gap. So send me those. We're trying to determine where we need to go. Maybe they missed a target range on these, but for today, best practices, let's continue to do the inspection until we know more. And if you are having a problem, get me some good information on it. Give me a good photo of the serial range so I can tell exactly what range it fell into, and a picture of the drum as well, similar to what you see here. That was a pretty good photo. I'd like to say I took that photo. No, I didn't, Trent. Very nice photo, though. You can kind of see where that the red area is, that the excessive wear on that cylinder as a result of that end cap. You know, once it's cocked, you're obviously going to change the spin diameter of that drum. So it's wearing, and I would assume it's wearing right on the dev unit. Okay. Production Color IoT. What is a pretty black and white slide, Trent? I didn't put much effort into this one, did I? And I did
Clean
it for a
and
reason.
crisp.
Well, I will say this. That Eureka article is what they kept updating, and you will find that in the DC 250 Eureka database. But it's a great must-have document. We had a couple escalations come in where individuals were looking for, J75 software, IoT, trying to get to the latest SPAR, and couldn't find it anywhere. So this document will not only tell you the sequence or of where the software levels progressed, it'll also tell you where to find it. And in this case, one of the GSN libraries had the exact software the individual needed, and the document itself pointed them to that GSN library, 131 blah, blah, blah library. But great document to have. I'd say it's a must-have for our color teams, production color teams, because it not only has the IoT, it's got the DFE software in there as well. So they haven't updated it in a while. My biggest my biggest wish list that never happened was that the Versant family would be adopted into this document. But I couldn't make that happen. Different groups, and it just didn't work out. But for anything below Versant, C75, J75, C60, great document to have, absolutely worth saving, giving to our folks, either through training, nuts and bolts, whatever, just sharing. Good document to have. I use it. It's a go-to for me all the time. So I'm at 11:26, and I'm pretty good, Trent. We've done it. So in review, and I do this for Dave Barrick. You trainers that are on the call know what OBR is, and Dave loves when we do presentations in OBR format. What does OBR stand for, Trent?
I don't know if I know that one.
I know. I like putting you on the spot. Trainers, I know you're out there biting the bit. I'll tell you, it is overview, body, review. So I told you what I was going to talk about. We reviewed what I was going to talk about, and then the body of what we talked about, and then in review. So in review, we talked about the future drive gear not being spared yet. Looking forward in the future. Promise you, it is. They already agreed to spare it. It's just not here yet. Bad answer, but not here yet. Talked a little bit about the HVF ejector, the new style, the early reported toner dispense failures for hardware parts, toner puff problem for the B8000 Altalink drums, the Versant flange gap problem and the bulletin that was associated with it, and the value of the production color IoT software matrix as a go-to document. So, Trent, I'm done. Let's open it up for review for my 3 minutes, ladies and gentlemen. Questions? Well, okay, Trent, that was great. It was great being back with you all today.
Is that Eureka on the 250?
I'm sorry. Yes, that would be that. Yes, that Eureka article is
that's the old one. Okay.
Family. Yeah.
Very
Guillermo,
old.
good to hear your voice.
Yes.
Well, okay, Trent. Maybe I did do that good of a job. Everybody's clear.
Very thorough.
Here. That's why I'm asking questions, because I just got here.
I know you were filling. Thank you, Guillermo. You put me at the 11:29 mark. I appreciate that. But it's a great document, Guillermo. It's definitely I would keep. It's a go-to. And, okay, Trent. I'll give 2 minutes of my time back. But thank you all, and have a great summer.
Awesome. Thank you. Let's see. Get the ball back. Move it over to Crystal. Find Crystal in the list. There she is.
I'm hiding.
It's alphabetical, so it eludes me. Awesome. Off you go.
Okay. First of all, I got a health public announcement for you guys. Very early this morning, I went and got a colonoscopy, and I know this is probably not the place to talk about this, but I encourage you, if you're over 50, to go. It's not that difficult. The prep is nowhere near as bad as it used to be, and it might save your life because it's one of the cancers that if caught early enough, is fast enough, is easily curable. So I'm done with my public safety announcement, but please get it done if you haven't already, if you're over 50. Okay, so Trent, oh, there we go. All right, so the first thing we're going to talk about is the B2C products. I've been getting some calls from you guys where you want to repurpose supplies for the 78 family that you are finding on site because they just happen to work for the C8000 family as well. You cannot use them if they are sold. So there's no workaround I've heard of anybody coming up with. So if you do find some that are sold, then you're just going to have to pitch them or sell them on eBay or something if you're allowed to do that. But you cannot sell them. I mean, you cannot use them. Any questions on that? Cool. The next thing is Sandra Hernandez, which you guys, or Sonia, you guys have probably talked to her on the engineering team if you've called up there for assistance. And she has nicely put the RML for this C8070 on the in Eureka, because it is hard to find. I mean, you can go all over the place, and unless you know exactly where to go, it is difficult to find. So just know that that is now there. It is Eureka Tip 1411092. The next thing, one of the biggies of what we're dealing with in the C8000 family is the 377-110 jams. And you guys are great at reaching out to me and giving me information on the what you think is a systemic issue. And so I've heard about a sluggish IBT, which only caused the issue on the second side, where you guys are putting in the low-speed transport into the high-speed machine, and that seems to be helping. There's also an issue with maybe the left side door where the pinch rollers are dragging, and also where your tray 2 feed-out actuator can be worn. What we found is that there's a gamut of things that you guys have told me that's a problem, and also what's been in the Eureka tips. So this is the actual Eureka tip that probably most pertains to where the issue is right now. And that is that they are seeing the plastic bushings on a chute assembly that are binding. Again, some of you are putting in the low-speed transport into the high-speed machine. I will let you know that because you're doing that, the low-speed are on back order, and it's taking quite a while to get them in. So I was just curious if any of you MacGyvers out there have found replacement bushings to swap out the plastic ones in the high speed. And if you have, what are you using and what are your results? Has anyone done that? Wow, I can't believe anybody hasn't.
I haven't found one that works well yet.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm wondering if we could maybe find some that are in green parts that are on damaged machines and take them off of the low speed or something. But if anybody happens to come up with a brass bushing that is the same as what's in the machine, please give me feedback. I'd really like to know if that's what you're doing, because obviously brass bushings are a whole lot cheaper than the assemblies.
Well, if I remember right, aren't those plastic rollers pressed onto the shaft? So even if we found brass bushings, I don't think you can replace them if it's the shaft I'm thinking of.
Well, you know, the thing that I've heard about you guys is like the SD cards cannot be reprogrammed, and look what you're doing. So I didn't know if one of you had MacGyvered, like maybe Caetano's gone onto the 3D machine and created some tool that enables you to do it. You never know with you guys, so I just thought I would ask. Now, what engineering is seeing is that the third level engineers, which keep in mind they're Fuji, They are wondering if the registration drive motor is more the issue than anything else. And if you think about it, it is possible. Because if you have a transport where you have binding going on, if your transport motor is only rated for a certain amount of drag, and suddenly you're getting more drag than what it's rated because it happens to be that it's not performing to its specifications, like it's supposed to be able to handle a higher amount of drag, then we may be replacing transports or cleaning out bushings or whatever we're doing to get them to run because we have a registration drive motor that is not, or I should say, drive motor that is not performing up to its spec. So if you could, the next one you come to, if you could try to replace the registration drive motor and also make sure that obviously your bushings aren't contaminated, and run a test for me and see if that takes care of it. If it does, I'm about to repeat something that I have probably said more than to you than anything I've ever said to you, and that is I want you to save the part, I want you to print a configuration report, and I want you to write detail as much as you can about what's going on with that part, why you changed it, and stick that in a box. And if it turns out that your machine never calls back in, then pitch it. But if it turns out like in a month or so your machine, let me back up. If your machine doesn't call back in for that issue, then I probably want that part back. But if you get a call right back that you have that issue and the only thing that you can do is replace the transport, I want that feedback. I also want that transport with the same information. What issues were you having, a configuration report, and obviously the part. And as I've always told you, reach out to me for stuff like this because I can reach out to engineering. And if it turns out they're having an issue that we are not aware that they are having, that they want parts back for, we can supply them and we can get this issue resolved sooner. So any questions on that?
Hey, Crystal, if it's a timing issue on from the registration motor to the POB sensor, can't they just create a little different tolerance in the software? It's cheaper than replacing motors.
But you don't know what else you're impacting when you do that. That's the only problem is you may, what scares me about doing things like that, now when you modify a piece of the machine, a technician coming behind you can see it, but when you go in and do an NVM change to try to work around something, if the technician's there for another problem that you inadvertently created, they're never going to know. And suddenly we have all kinds of parts being replaced. So we know...
Can't engineering address that with like a SPAR?
Yes, but we're still having the issue. Matter of fact, I've had 2 requests to replace machines in the last 2 weeks for this exact issue, and it's got the latest SPAR on it. So it's probably along the lines of the Power Saver. You remember they came out with a updated software version to fix the machine not waking from Power Saver, and I can't tell you how many of you sent me emails that, hey, I'm still having the issue after the software was upgraded. So it may have helped the problem, but I believe we're still having the problem. Has anybody else encountered that where you put the SPAR on there and you're still having the issue, it's fixed, or give me some feedback?
Hey, Crystal?
Yeah.
This is Jeff with RK Dixon. I'm looking at the list in your PDF, and I'm also looking to see if anybody would be willing to replicate some steps that we took to alleviate our 377 110s on the 8070. You see where they called out the tray 2 feed out sensor actuator is being worn.
Yeah, let me go back a page so everybody can see what you're talking about.
Okay.
Maybe. Come on, baby. All right, Trent, it hates me. I'm sorry, I'm having trouble. Go back, but continue on.
We took the steps and have had some success, but I'm out of 8070s that are exhibiting the problem. We added one wrap on the spring on the tray 2 feed out sensor, but you really have to pull the sensor out to do this. And I also added a small Mylar extension to the flag. And I just took something just from a leftover Innovators kit, cut a small piece of Mylar, and extended the flag by about 1.5 millimeters.
Are your actuators worn when you see that, or no?
No. These were low mileage machines. I really couldn't see any difference between the actuator that was in the machine and a brand new one, which we actually ordered a couple of sensors so I could do the modification before going out to the customer site, just in case I managed to break it in trying to add another wrap on the spring. And why I'd be interested in having this tested is because we also had replaced the roller, the registration backup with the low-speed version. I checked the door bushings as well, and we also put a washer underneath the reg sensor and shimmed it slightly closer to the paper path. But since we did multiple items on each machine, we're not really sure which one was the most effective.
Well, can
we'll definitely be interested if anybody else wanted to try modifying the tray 2 takeaway the feed out sensor and see if it helps the issue.
Can you send me details on what you're doing as far as how long you're making the shim, how thick the shim is if you're using a certain thickness, and also on your spring wrap, you're saying you're wrapping it one time further, and
right.
Also you're moving the, I'm not sure what you said, you're moving closer to the paper path. What was that?
Yeah, registration sensor.
Okay. All right. Can you write that up for me, please? You know I'm going to
Sure.
ask that. And if you happen to, whenever you guys do anything like that, take pictures. Send it to me. As I've always told you, I don't care about the number of emails I get. I would rather know about things that you're seeing and things that you're doing to work around issues, because it could become a best practice. And we could also, if we came across, for instance, what you said about putting the, extending the actuator, well, guess what? We may be able to submit that, get you to submit that to the innovators, and they may be able to come out with some type of deal that you can just snap onto the actuator, and you could get some money out of it. So these things I want to know about, and it's a win-win for everyone.
Crystal,
Charlie with CTX. I suspect you're the one that filled out that portal escalation, basically describing the same thing. So I assume
yes,
it's you.
it is.
Okay. I just took a screenshot of that and forwarded it to a couple of guys out of my Portland office yesterday. Unfortunately, I gave them all the steps. So I will check with them and see if they've done anything with it yet, and if they haven't, I'll see if we can't just do the sensor flag extension and see how it goes.
That's awesome. And can you send me the steps you sent them?
Yeah, it's on the portal.
Oh, it's on the portal? Okay. All right. I've been involved in a big project lately, so I've not really had time to go pull the portal data. And I also, real quick, I wanted to tell you guys, I've planned on having this meeting was supposed to be about software, the SD card, the MCU, memory, how all of that plays together and what happens. And believe me, I never dreamed that it was such a big undertaking. And I have so much detail that I'm trying to put together so it's clear and concise. So I'm going to try to have that for next month's meeting. If I don't have it by next month's meeting, I definitely will have it for the water cooler for that month, for May. Okay? All right. So anything else on this? You guys are giving me some great information.
Hey, Crystal. We had a transfer belt binding issue, and we actually fixed that with just some lubrication. I know it's not a brass bushing, so you typically don't lubricate those, but that was a brand new machine that had that problem, and that was about 2 weeks ago, and they haven't called back since. So I'm just wondering if maybe some lubrication in some certain areas, like the dragging pinch rollers, if that would help. Obviously, the paper hit the sensor in the right amount of time.
Yeah, it does help. The only thing is we need to verify what type of lubricant we're using, because for some lubricants, if you put them on plastic, they eat it. And so you really have to read what you're lubricating with. And that's one thing your techs need to know, is you can't just grab whatever you have and use it, because it does,
I know.
Certain things you do better.
What we use, to be honest with you, is Mobile One. It actually works great. Because TriFlow breaks down, the Mobile One doesn't, and it doesn't seem to eat away at some of those sensitive parts.
Okay. They do good in your car, too, don't they?
10,000 miles we'll get out of it, at least.
That's right. That's right. Okay, so we've kind of gone over this one pretty well, but please, 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 you guys, I can't emphasize enough. There's not too much information. You can't inundate me. If I have questions on it, I'll send it back to you. Otherwise, I put it in a folder, and then if I start seeing a history or seeing multiple calls on it, I'll reach back out to you. Okay, the next thing. We are having, on the C8000 family, this just came to me last night from third level when I said, hey, you guys have anything that you need me to ask about? They are having issues with the 341, 340 codes on the MDM EEPROM fault code. It's a fault code. And you can't clear it. You go through and you struggle clearing it. So this is a case of where they are trying to gather information. And so the next 3 screens are basically steps to gather information and what they're looking for and how to clear it. Now, what I did was I highlighted this because if you do the steps that they request and it doesn't clear it, you notice they're saying to reboot the machine one more time and then confirm the fault and then capture the logs again. In other words, you have the fault, you went through the steps, the machine, you rebooted it, and that fault came right back. They need that data to understand why the steps that they provided did not fix the issue. Okay? And so the next thing is we need the data. I mean, I put this in here on purpose, and I've said it multiple times throughout what I've presented so far. Because, guys, we're on the same team. We pass information up to them just to kind of make them aware. There is an engineer that is in the color team. His name's Andre. And I just reach out to him, and I say, hey, just want to make you aware of this. And if they're seeing it on their side, then they request more information from me. And so in this case, they're reaching back out to us, and they want us to help them with the problem that they're starting to see. So please, if you can get me any information on this, I will happily send it up to third level and second level, and that way we can work through it and see if we can't get this issue resolved sooner rather than later. Any questions on this? All right. Now we're going to talk about the C405 UI issues. That is the hot one right now. Now, the issues I'm hearing about are 2 things, and they may be the same or they may not be. The first one is when the customer sends a job to the machine or the customer walks up to the machine and tries to wake it up, it won't wake up. And so one of the suggestions came in to turn off the sleep mode because what's happening is when it goes into deep sleep, it does cut off the power to the network controller. So we want to get rid of that so the network controller is always alive. I have seen emails from you guys that say, guess what? Did it? No help. Is that the case? Anyone? I know you've done it. I've seen the emails.
More often than not, I have seen that not fix the problem. So far, I have replaced 3 of the UI displays, and I mean the entire assembly, and the problem has been fixed with that.
Okay, let me go to the next problem just in case they're together. And another one is you see the UI is up, and the customer can pound the screen, they can go anywhere, touching things, and the machine will not respond. And this one, a couple of you, Joel and Indian, have an escalation in for this. And one was fixed by doing the, basically putting the machine back to default. And I sent that email out, and I'll be happy to send it out again, of the exact reset you're going, initialization you're going to do, because there's so many of them listed in eDoc. So I will send out the exact one. So the one third level escalation that we have is going to be closed because initializing that machine fixed it. The other one is one that Joel Daly put out there, and Joel, I'm still waiting for information, and I'm going to have to come up there and hang you upside down by your toes or find your technician and do it. But what they want to know is, this is kind of a joke between Joel and I, is they want to know if you have the machine that's locked up or won't wake from sleep, and it's mostly if it's locked up. They want you to do basically a hand on one spot and a hand on the UI, touching the UI, and also touching the controller chassis. You are grounding that UI at that time, and we want to know if you ground that UI, does it work? Because they are suspecting a grounding issue. And so when you replace that UI, I'm not sure why that will stop the problem unless you happen to get a UI that maybe the components are grounded better than others, because it's not happening on every machine. So do me a favor, do the twister thing. And actually, Joel and I were going back and forth. If you want to do the hokey pokey while you're doing the twister thing and turn yourself around, you're all great with that. Just please let me know, and I know I sent an email out to you for this. Please let me know if grounding that UI fixes it. The problem we're having right now is we cannot determine if the machine has a hardware issue or a software issue. So these are steps. I'm just going to blow through them because of time. These are steps they want you to take to get the logs. Now, you notice I highlighted something here. When you're going through that process, and they want the logs captured after you press the UI and it does not respond. They don't want you to sit there and keep pounding it all over the place to see if it responds. Just touch it twice. If it doesn't respond at that point, then capture that data, but don't sit there and keep touching it all over the place in case you think you'll get lucky in one spot. The other thing they want is a video of you having your hand on the chassis and you touching the UI. So if someone can tell me how you're going to do that, if it's just one technician, I would love to know that. So anyway, please, if the video really helps if you're doing both, and show them that, yeah, grounding it didn't fix it. So you need to go back and look and see if it is software, or if it's a case of it's a hardware issue. We're all leaning towards hardware issue because replacing the UI does fix some of them. And I know in some of the cases you guys have replaced the UI and then you've turned around and it's not fixed it, so you've replaced the other parts to it, the main board, all of that stuff. One other thing I wanted to tell you is that the EEPROMs, those little things that your technicians take off of boards and use a tweaker to do it, because none of us have the tool to take them off, and then you break off those little skinny legs, and then your machine at that point is toast because we don't have the ability to get them. We are working, Field engineering second level is busting their tails to try to get those spared. If that happens, I will let you know. Okay? Any issues or any questions on this, feedback or anything?
Actually, those 3 UIs that I ended up replacing, the 2 problems, at least in my situation, were not part of the same ordeal, and it just wouldn't come out of sleep mode. But now that you're mentioning the concept of the grounding, all 3 of those machines are in high static areas, a lot of humidity and things of that nature, so there may be something to that.
Do you still have those UIs?
No, unfortunately I do not. Those were a couple months ago.
Okay. You know, I need all of you to get a U-Haul trailer and attach it to your car. It's for cases just like this. Hey, I used this part 6 months ago. Let me go to the back of my U-Haul. I bet it's there. Anyway, you guys doing a great job of providing parts and information. So, I mean, I can't really beat you up for that. But, you know, that's great feedback because maybe what's happening is static is blowing these UIs. So there's something we can look for. If you have a problem of a machine not waking up or your UI is not responsive, is your machine on carpet? I'd be curious. Because I can tell you, they did say the instances of this problem are going down as summer comes. So you may be onto something.
Well, but I guess, yeah.
I think I messed up. Oh, no, I guess that's it. So any other questions, any other situations we need to talk about, machine issues, anything like that?
Yeah, just that update on my C405. We did nothing other than turn off PoE to the network jack, and it's been 2 weeks now without locking it up.
I have no doubts in that. You guys know widespread on the office color and on the phaser family, the C405s, the little things, everything. If you are having a machine that the software keeps getting corrupted on, or you're having to replace SD cards or program them, do me a favor, check and see if PoE is part of the customer's network going to that machine. And if it is, have a discussion, see if the IT person's willing to turn it off. I'm hoping, and if you don't, you go to your manager and request a PoE tester. If they deny it, then tell them to call me, and I will absolutely do everything in my power to get you one. That is a tool that will save you a lot of money. So even if your customer tells you, your IT person says, yeah, I turned it off, please verify, because it may be a case of not that they didn't turn it off, but maybe they didn't know all the steps to completely turn it off. So PoE right now is a PIA to us. So eliminating that for some of these bizarre issues is a good thing. If you happen to come across a machine that, hey, guess what, I turned PoE off and my bizarre problem went away, obviously I want to know about that. Great feedback. Anything else, guys? Well, cool. I'm going to let you go, but again, my door is always open via email or phone calls. That's helps if that's easier for you. But no information is too much because you never know. Thanks, Trent.
Thank you. And thank you, Dion, and everybody for listening.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Enjoy your afternoon. See you guys next month.
away from me.
Thanks a lot.